value Ville. Peasant doesn't remember exactly where he came from. He's heard all the stories from his parents, but he was just a baby when they adopted him. They always smile when they talk about that day when Pa, a farmer, found him in his field. You were such a happy baby, Ma remembered, wrapped up in a beautiful blanket, snuggled into a handmade basket with a bow and a note. Please take good care of our precious peasant. Although it breaks our hearts, we have no choice but to leave him in your care. Thank you. The name in the note was a bit tear-smeared, but they made it out as best they could. Well, as much as Ma and Pa had been praying for a baby, they went right to work trying everything they could think of to find this little guy's parents. But try as they might, the parents were nowhere to be found. So eventually the happy day came when they finally felt free to adopt him as their own. The boy flourished on the farm, playing happily and often dancing to music that only he could hear. He learned to work hard and did really well in school, till about the time he turned 13. You see, at school, there was a large group of teens from a town at the top of a nearby hill. They did everything together and they looked good doing it. Well, one of those things they did together was to mercilessly mock Peasant. They teased him about his weird name, and every time they caught him dancing, they'd ridicule him so hard that he'd walk away in shame. One day, Hank, one of the hilltop kids, saw him curled up in a corner and felt sorry for him. He helped him up and confided in him that he used to be just like him. And he offered to help him get to where he could actually be a hilltop kid. No more mocking, lots of friends. How could this even be possible? Asked Peasant. His new friend wasted no time as he hiked up his sleeve and compared his super beautiful skin color to Peasant's dark drab gray. That's the difference, crowed Hank. I used to be dull gray myself, but those days are over. How did it happen? There's so much difference, admired Peasant. Well, the whole thing is kind of a long process, Hank continued. I'm not even all the way there myself, but I'm finally allowed to hang out with them, he bragged. The shade we're shooting for is a complex combination of colors that have to be applied in just the right way, in just the right place. And that combination begins with a blue base. This will cure the silly dancing and help you stiffen up into more of a totally cool shuffle. With high hopes, Hank shuffled him off to the blue base boys. Give him a good base, boys, instructed Hank. He needs to lose a lot of loose. And so the treatments began. Day after day, Peasant laid low and continued his after-school treatments till his patina slowly took on more hilltop blue. It was a painful sacrifice, and he did miss the dancing, which reminded him that he had actually stopped hearing the music. Then, after a few weeks, enough base was built, and Hank directed the first of the clear coats to begin. Peasant was so excited to watch as layers of glossy yellows began to produce that distinct shade of green that was all the rage on the hill. Those progressed into subtle additions of reds and some light touches of neon pink for pop. The day finally arrived when Hank determined Peasant was ready to present on the hill. They shuffled slowly and a bit stiffly up to the group that would decide if he was worthy. And I think it's fair to say that they were both shocked when the group laughed loudly at both of them. Apparently, while Hank had been helping Peasant get ready, a pretty bright shade of orange had become the most exciting and important color the group had ever worn. So the only two with zero orange became the obvious laughingstock of everybody who had been paying attention. The laughter rang in their ears as they trudged slowly and stiffly back down the hill. Peasant was exhausted as he wondered if he'd ever be all the right colors. I mean, if Hank got last off the hill, what hope could he possibly have? That's when he first heard the voice. It wasn't very loud, but it floated up from the valley with a sweetness that made him forget his heavy blanket of disappointment. The valley voice quietly reminded him of musical moments and dancing days. The memories lightened his steps as the voice invited him toward a nearby waterfall, which he had never noticed before. Peace began to fill his thirsty soul as he left Hank to his own thoughts and accepted the quiet invitation. As the waterfall cascaded over him, he felt layer after layer lifted, till even the deepest hilltop blue dissolved into the sparkling stream. His arms and legs began splashing with long-lost looseness. Music danced in his head again, and he was only a little bummed that he'd be returning to his former gray. But when he finally waded out from the waterfall, it wasn't drab gray that caught his eye. That layer, too, had been waterfalled off him. His arms glistened to a glare. The sheen was so bright he couldn't see the water beads rolling off. Arms, legs, and everything in between were the most beautiful luminescent silver that he'd ever seen in his life. The beautiful glare and the sheer brilliance of the sterling overwhelmed even the memory of puny hilltop hues. Overcome by joy, he fell to his knees and strained to hear the valley voice again, if only to thank him. And in that earnest moment, the noise of the water wandered into a symphony, and there it was, the voice, both celebrant and somber, restful yet restive, with a peaceful power. The voice showed Peasant the value that he craved had already been given to him from his birth. He saw his name before being smeared by tears. Peasant became present. A person designed to show such a degree of value that it could never be acquired or achieved. It could only have been given by someone else, someone of seemingly infinite value, a gift, a present. Present knew that his purpose wasn't to copy or conform to anybody else. His value never depended in the least on others' opinions. It was always built right in, where he could never lose it. He was designed to shine and to dance and to bring other heavy, over-painted souls to the waterfall, beginning with Hank.